All right, I think we're going to get ready to start. And so I'd like to welcome everyone to the third of Ask Hers, Count Women into the 2021 city election. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jillian Hines and I'm the president of Ask Her. I have a co-anchor tonight, baby Frankie, so hopefully he'll let me get through this. But I'm really honored to introduce tonight's session on the joys of running. But first, I do want to pause and take a moment to acknowledge the land. And Ask Her really tries to build a community and a connection to each other and to the land. And so I want to endeavor to honor the land and its treaties as we strengthen our relationship with it and with each other. And so I want to acknowledge that we live, work, and stream on the traditional territories of the Blackfoot Confederacy, the Tsuut'ina, the Nakoti, and the Métis Nations, and I want to recognize all peoples who make their home in Treaty 7. I want to thank you for hosting us on the land tonight and for helping us to build our community. And I want to reflect a little bit, sort of, I think as we enter into fall, it's a little bit of a poignant time, and we've got a few months left of the year, but almost exactly 1 year ago, the board of Ask Her got together and said, what are the critical programs that we think we need to offer to really support women who are interested in running? And out of that came our Prepare Her program, our Mentor Her program, and this fantastic Count Women In series. Fast forward about a year later, we've actually not only launched Prepare Her, we redesigned it to work in a virtual environment after COVID, and we had our first graduation ceremony in August of this year. And we loved it so much that we've actually offered it again, and we're getting ready to launch our second cohort next week, and we're so excited. We've also done Mentor Her as a pilot this summer, and we're actually offering another mentor program, which is a multi-session virtual program that gives participants who are interested in running for office the opportunity to be mentored by multiple women who have experience in politics. If you know anybody that's interested, go into your networks, ask them to apply. The program, there's no cost, and you can sign up for it on the website. So we're so excited about that. And by the end of this year, we actually expect to see over 60 women run through both our Prepare Her and our Mentor Her programs. And I can tell you, these participants are fantastic, and I can't wait to see them take the political world and the community kind of leadership and advocacy by storm. We've already had one of our participants actually announce their candidacy for the municipal election in Calgary, and I can't wait to see who else we're going to see from this community. It's absolutely fantastic. But now I want to introduce tonight's event. And first we'll do a little bit of logistics. Engagement is important to us. We are using Zoom, so I appreciate it's a bit of a different engagement experience. So we will use the Q&A feature. And at any time, if you have a comment or a question, please use the feature in Zoom and type that in, and we'll ask it during the Q&A segment. If you like a question or a comment, actually click the thumbs up, and that'll actually signal to us that it's something that the audience has energy for. So feel free to upvote, and you can comment and question anonymously as well. We'll also be recording so that you can share tonight's event or actually go back to it if there's a couple of really kind of neat topics that you want to just reflect on. And I do want to say our previous Count Women In events focused more on the critical barriers or challenges that actually deter women from running. And while these are really important topics to tackle, it's also exciting and a joy and really positive experience to run or be in office. And so we wanted today to have a bit more of that uplifting conversation, because there are kind of joys and positive aspects, certainly, about entering into the race, right? And so we're changing it up, and we have a fantastic panel who will share their experience and about the rewards of political life and how you or how their and your diverse experiences can be a valuable and are a valuable asset. So I'd like to welcome tonight's panelists. We have Pearl Callahassan, who represented the Lesser Slave Lake electoral district as a progressive conservative MLA from 1989 to 2015. We also have Janice Irwin joining us, who is the current MLA for Edmonton Highlands Norwood, elected in 2019, and is part of the official opposition, serving as a deputy whip, supporting women in LGBTQ issues. And we also have Rajan Sani joining us, who is the MLA for Calgary Northeast Riding and serves as the Minister of Community and Social Services. She was elected in 2019 under the United Conservative Party. And our moderator tonight is one of our new Ask Her board members, and I'm so thrilled that you're going to get to know her. So we have Tony Minas, who's leading the governance work with our board, but she brings a diverse skill set in everything from government relations, the nonprofit sector, and grassroots organizations. This enables Tony to bring a great understanding around the service and knowledge gaps that currently exist in our system and help reflect the importance of electing diverse knowledge gaps that currently exist. Tony is the co-founder. He's giving me the cue that I'm talking too long. Hold on. Here we go. Tony is the co-founder of the Satrang Foundation, an organization dedicated towards increasing accessibility of community services for racialized communities. And she's been recognized as the University of Calgary Distinguished Alumni, and in 2018 was named in Think for Action's top 20 under 25 categories. And as you can see, we do all of this with babies on our laps, puppies in the background, family and caregiving responsibilities. And so anyway, I'm just so thrilled to introduce Tony and to have her take it away with our fantastic panelists. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for that introduction, Jillian. Good evening, everyone. I'm incredibly excited to be here with you today to be a part of this important conversation. So I come from a background of working with historically marginalized communities to increase their access to systems and resources in our communities. I'm currently supporting an employment program focused on bridging the gap between the workforce and individuals who are typically excluded from meaningful employment. I work towards moving the dial little by little towards a more equitable and accessible city in all realms. The passion extends to creating more opportunities for women to be in decision-making realms like politics. And in working towards that, again, I could not be more excited about the conversation we're having today. One of the key ingredients to sustainable change is finding joy in your work. And that's exactly what we will be discussing today with our panelists. So in the interest of time, let's dive right in. My first question will be for Pearl. So you have held elected office for 26 years as an Alberta MLA. Clearly you find joy in the work. Could you please tell us a little bit more about how you've, what's kept you in public service for so many years?
Thank you very much, Tony. I just want to say thank you also to Jillian for the wonderful introduction. I just lost track of it, so I had to rejoin, so sorry about that. Good evening, everyone. It's really wonderful to have people come and listen, come and be involved, to make sure they can glean something from all the panelists to ensure that they can continue to provide what leadership you and the Ask Her Calgary have been providing. So thank you. So let me talk about what my joy was for 26 years. My joy was the people, the challenges, the successes, and the future possibilities in politics. I wanted to make sure on the people's side that the people had an opportunity to be represented, those who had never been represented before, and making sure that they were well represented. I also wanted to make sure that they understood that my dedication was to make sure that Lesser Slave Lake constituency and Northern Alberta issues would definitely be at the forefront of anything we did. I wanted to ensure that we did also the challenges. So what were the challenges? Those were driven by issues identified by my people of Lesser Slave Lake and Northern Alberta, because those challenges were those that we needed to address for those individuals who needed things in their area that had not been fulfilled in the past. The successes, seeing the growth of all the people within my constituency understanding the political system, right from the time of the nomination, the election, and decision-making, so that they can look at how they can be involved and they can embark on seeing equal representation on all boards and commissions in Alberta, whether they're hospital boards, whether they're college boards, or whether they're economic development boards, because that's where decisions are made in order for that to be enacted in the political stream. And I wanted to make sure that people had that opportunity, and those especially who had never been part of this. And the people of Lesser Slave Lake, they rose to the occasion. We broke what we call the Kiam mentality.
Fabulous, thank you so much. Absolutely, the joy does come from the people, and that was wonderful to hear that. Alongside joy, you know, the motivation towards working towards improving our communities, I would say, is probably an equal part of important part of this conversation. So my next question's for MLA Irwin. As a first-term politician, what was your key motivation for running for office? How has that evolved, and if at all, and through your campaign or being in office, how have those changes kind of presented themselves?
Thanks, Tony. And I gave everybody a little house tour there as I moved inside. Just give me a thumbs up and make sure I'm totally clear and good. Okay, awesome. Thank you. Yeah, well, first of all, just what an honor to be here with you all from here on Treaty 6 territory in Edmonton, Miskatchewan, Waskahegan. And I just love seeing the list of all the participants as well. I know a few of those names, and some of them are even from right here in Edmonton. So that's fantastic. I wasn't sure if it would just be a Calgary crowd. So welcome everybody. Yeah, and it's an honor to be here with Pearl and to follow her answers. Oh my goodness, this is going to be a challenge, and Minister Sani as well. Yeah, so I mean, the question was around me being a first-term politician and kind of what motivated me to run for office. Well, some folks know that while I was only elected last year, I did run for federal office in 2015, and so I've been active in politics for a while, and truly, you know, one of the big reasons why I first ran for office, I started early in about 2013 in advance of the 2015 election, was because I saw issues that were impacting my community that I felt weren't being addressed. And one of those issues that motivated me then to get involved was housing. I actually didn't have a car at the time, and I was car free, so I was running to and from work every day. And I just saw the sheer numbers of folks experiencing homelessness as something that I thought, like, what the heck? You know, I'd been in rural Alberta. Some of you know I was a teacher in rural Alberta prior to coming back to Edmonton, and you know, it was really eye-opening for me to see in my neighborhoods, you know, large numbers of folks experiencing homelessness. And so for me, it was kind of those issues that were close to me that initially really prompted my interest in running. And as many of you know, spoiler alert, I was not successful running federally in 2015, but you know, ran a really strong campaign and came very close to the Conservative that I lost to. And after that, I stayed involved, and you know, I stayed involved in the community and stayed involved in politics with the NDP, and yeah, and then when 2018 came around, and my former MLA Brian Mason decided that he wasn't going to run again, I had a few people say, "Oh, do you think you'd ever run provincially, Janice?" And truly, it didn't take a whole lot of convincing, because, you know, I do a lot of talking with women who are interested in running for politics, women and non-binary folks. And we know that the research shows that women often have to be asked many, many times before they agree. And, you know, honestly, I think because I'd already run, and because I live here, this is a community that I love, it didn't take much convincing for me. And of course, I was ultimately successful in 2019. So yeah, I think it was a range of factors that motivated me. And I know, you know, a lot of folks know that I'm pretty active in my community, and just the honor that and the privilege of being able to represent, you know, so many different folks in the neighborhoods that I call home. It's a pretty great honor for sure.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Emily Irwin. I'm absolutely happy to hear that it didn't take too much asking to get you to the provincial ring. So we're really happy to have you here. So our next question is for Minister Sani. So you are also a first-term MLA and were appointed as Minister of Community and Social Services. So as a woman of color, which is historically an underrepresented demographic, especially in politics, what are some of the ways that you would say your identity has maybe set you apart, or maybe even better prepared you for the roles that you've held?
Okay, well, thank you, Tony, for that question. First of all, I just want to say I'm just so delighted to be participating this evening with all of you, with Pearl and with Janice and everybody from your team. And I have to say, Jillian, that your co-moderator is super cute. And it made me laugh because I've done so many meetings with one or two or three or four kids in the background. And even right now, I'm just going to forewarn everybody, I'm just sitting in my dining room, and my daughter was doing homework next to me. My mother-in-law is in the kitchen. Puppies are everywhere. So there's going to be a lot of noise in the background, but it's all good noise. You know, I get asked this question quite often, and every time I get asked this question, I just kind of go back to my childhood. I born and raised in Calgary, in the northeast part of the city. I was born in the 70s, so I've been around for a long time. And at that time, there was very little cultural or ethnic diversity in my neighborhood. So racism was a very, very real issue. And I was also one girl with two brothers, and all of my cousins were male. So not only was I visible in a way that nobody really wants to be visible, but I was also the only girl in a family full of boys. So there were a lot of episodes of, I guess, what we call systemic and institutionalized racism today, and where the world is very much aware of that. So I learned early on, first of all, that you know, it's tough, and I needed to be a little bit stronger and a little bit more resilient. And my mother did such a wonderful job in preparing me for that. And I think, and it will come as no surprise to everybody, because it doesn't matter if you're somebody's who's a visible minority, but women, many times you do have to work harder. We know that to be the case. And I'm an economist. I have an MBA in finance, and I worked in the oil and gas industry. So that is most definitely an old boys club. And even there, I just had to work twice as hard, 3 times as hard as everyone else. I had to show up, be the first one in the office, the last one to leave, and just really concentrate on being extraordinarily resilient and patient. And so I think those early experiences, that early upbringing, really inculcated a certain way of being in me, so that I could be a little bit more prepared with the challenges of politics. So, you know, those fundamental skills I developed at an early age. Now, how does my identity set me apart? Interestingly enough, you know, I'm going to be 50 next year. So for a long time, I was always very conscious of the fact that I'm a woman, and I'm a visible minority woman. Nowadays, I forget, right? I do. I'm very conscious of it in my work to ensure that there is a gender lens on what I do. But when it comes to me, I forget that I'm a woman, and I forget what I look like until somebody reminds me. And that's the disappointing part, right? Because at times, you know, what you do and where you're at should be totally based on merit, and there shouldn't be any need for anyone to remind you that you are different in a certain way. And I'm not talking about today. I'm not talking about this. I'm talking about in the context of work. And so I get silly questions all the time, you know, like, oh, your English is so good. That's amazing. You know, how many years have you been here? It's like, well, why would you assume that I wasn't born here? So that's just one of a variety of questions that I receive still, and I know a lot of women can relate. But the only other way, I guess, that it sets me apart, I think, is because from the cultural background that I come from, I've been exposed to a whole new way of life, a whole new way of thinking. I'm very involved with the Sikh community, and so I'm able to bring some of those perspectives to my work, and that has been really helpful.
Wonderful. Thank you for that answer. I also do much of my work in the Northeast, so it's near and dear to my heart, and I think I can definitely relate to a lot of what you spoke to there. Also being, you know, a woman of color, and you know, I think some of those things in our upbringing or some of the experiences have kind of in an odd way lent itself to a form of almost resiliency that we are able to kind of incorporate into our lives. So thank you so much for that answer. On a similar note, my next question is for Pearl. So you were the first Métis woman elected to public office in Alberta. In your experience, what are some of the joys and maybe even possible drawbacks of kind of being that first?
Wow, I was really intrigued by what Rajan was talking about because it's, some of the issues that she's talking about are very similar to what I have experienced. So one of the joys that I have seen is that it was so good to be able to see how we could break that glass ceiling. For myself, as an Indigenous woman, as you indicated, being young, being the youngest one for a while at the legislature, having a very young family, having a huge family, my extended family, because that was sort of like a way for me to see that if I could do it, so could others. So breaking that glass ceiling for myself was very good. The other breaking the glass ceiling for me was the Indigenous people for the Indigenous people. We saw a lot of I saw a lot of racism, and we experienced a lot of racism, and we continue to do that. And I think for us to be able to break that glass ceiling, we have to be able to be involved in the decision making that impacts our lives, decisions that do break or make individual people or nations or different groups of people. The other one, of course, is breaking the glass ceiling for the disenfranchised. And all three that I named was very important for us to be able to do that because it sets the stage for everybody. It gives us an ability to be able to hang on to maybe what I call a ladder, the first rung of the ladder, and then you pull yourself up and you keep pulling yourself up. And that to me was very important. The second thing that I thought was really important for my joys was to see people rise to different levels of economic parity. And that was looking at the people in my constituency who had never achieved that and never have had thought they could achieve it until they saw that we could break that glass ceiling. So on the drawbacks, if you want me to talk about some of the drawbacks that I saw, one of them, of course, was living up to the expectations of some of my constituents and some of my people. On call 24/7, and you don't see your family. You certainly need an understanding spouse or partner, children, brothers, sisters, and all your extended family. And on ensuring that how do you keep up the reading, the follow-ups, the phone calls, the concerns, trying to make sure that you had your projects followed up on. And I'm sure I see Janice shaking her head because I know what that's like. And of course, the other one was that how to incorporate Indigenous people to understand all political processes so they can be involved in the decision-making that happens that impact their lives. Those were my drawbacks.
Fabulous. Thank you so much, Pearl, for that that very thoughtful answer. I think at OSCR, obviously, our mandate is to, our mission is to continue to break that glass ceiling and supporting, creating opportunities so that we can continue to break that ceiling. So we're very grateful for the legacy that, you've created in Alberta here. And I think something that really touched me personally when you were just chatting, as you said, if I could do it, so can others. And that's a really motivating thing. Much for sharing all that. So my next question will be for MLA Irwin. So the political realm can be quite overwhelming, I'm sure, and there's often quite a bit of pressure to conform. How do you maintain your sense of self and authenticity throughout a campaign, but also once you're in office?
Yeah, that's a great question. And and first of all, I before the other participants joined, I was giving Pearl a bit of a shout out because, I haven't actually, I think this is the first time we've actually met. And yeah, I mean, we're from different parties, but she's definitely a trailblazer. And, it's pretty wild to think that right now I don't think we have any self-identified Indigenous folks in the legislature. And we've got a lot of work to do when it comes to electing more racialized folks and more women. And so this is why obviously I'm excited to be a part of this conversation. And I think the one piece of my identity that a lot of folks know is that I am a member of the LGBTQ2S+ community. And you know, I'm the only openly gay MLA in the legislature right now as well. And in the last legislature, we had 3 openly gay MLAs. So in some respects, we're losing some of our diversity, whether it's racial or gender. The list goes on, right? And so I'm hopeful through, you know, like I said, through conversations like these, we can work on that. And, you know, it's not just in the legislature, right? It's at the city council level as well, where we've got a lot of work to do. Many of you know here in Edmonton, we've only got 2 women elected to city council, and that is pretty wild. Yeah, Pearl is saying, wow, that's pretty wild in 2020 that we've got 2 women on city council. So yeah, I mean, for me, I think that's probably the one piece of my identity that that I could touch on a little bit. You know, I said I'd campaigned previously. You know, I ran federally for 2 years, and actually when I was out, but I can tell you that I rarely talked about my sexuality at the doors during that campaign. And if anything, I probably hid it a bit. Those of you who know a bit about me, I had much longer hair back then. I only cut my hair in late 2017, and so you know, folks pretty much, you know, I was straight passing, and people just assumed that I was you know, straight. And I remember being asked questions like, oh, so do you have a husband, and things like that, and just kind of like, nope, single, just, and you're not acknowledging it. And so so yeah, truly, and I mean, I'm not saying I regret it, because that's where I was, that's the place I was at that time in my life, that I just wasn't as willing to talk about it. But I do know, because your question is about authenticity, I do know that I think that impacted me a little bit during that campaign, that I felt that I couldn't truly be myself. And so certainly since then, and obviously during the 2019 provincial election, I was totally open about it. And not that anybody asked if I had a husband during that campaign, but had they, I certainly would have said, well, no, men are great, but you know, not my cup of tea. But yeah, and I think that's important, right? You know, I think it's important that that young people who are queer or trans, that they see that there's somebody who's a member of the community in office. And yeah, and I know it does make a difference. So for me now, it's really important that I am you know, that I am unequivocal in my support of LGBTQ2S+ rights, and that, you know, for that young person who is struggling, they see that it's okay, right? And it does get better. So yeah, I think that kind of, I'm giving you a long answer to my question, Tony, but that, you know, my journey certainly shifted, and that's where that authenticity piece has become important to me, because it is a huge part of who I am.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. Thank you for that answer, and kind of you know, taking us on that journey with you of how you navigated all of that. I think you touched on some really important points. Just in our panel, we have so many unique, you know, we have 3 very, very unique perspectives, and, you know, different communities represented, and different, you know, demographics and backgrounds. And we're just really grateful for you all will be being so willing to share all of that. So thank you. And then for my last question, I will start with Minister Sawney, but I would love to get Emily, Erwin, and Pearl your thoughts on it as well. Kind of throughout the process of being in office and campaigning, and all of everything that comes around that experience, what would you say that you've learned about yourself throughout that experience, and has anything surprised you?
Thanks for that question. I was actually laughing when Janice was saying that people would ask her at the door to see if she had a husband. I mean, I got the same question too, but it never ended there. You get these crazy questions. Then it would move on to, well, what does your husband think? And do you have children? And who's going to take care of your children? And one thing would lead to another. And I went home and I asked my husband, did anybody in all these years that we've been married ever ask you who's going to take care of your kids while you're at work? Not once. So, you know, that was quite interesting. But what I learned about myself, or the parts that I really enjoyed when I was on the campaign trail, was just hearing the stories. I'm a bit of a storyteller myself, so for me to be actually on the other end of that and listen to some of the really heartwarming and heart-wrenching stories that I heard at the doors, they really resonated with me, and I never really forgot about them, actually. So in any of the work that I do, and in any of the policy that I talk about within the ministry and I bring forward, I always relate it back to my constituents. And I always try to bring that authentic, really real perspective so that people understand that what we do affects real people at the end of the day. And I always try to draw those analogies with my colleagues and with my counterparts so that they know that at the end of the day, we're doing this for Albertans, and somebody's going to be the recipient of the service or going to be affected by the policy somehow. What surprised me was how fragile people are. You know, through their stories, you can hear, sometimes it's not even said, but between the lines, you can hear about the fear and the anxiety and the sense of loss, especially those individuals who lost employment due to a downturn in the economy. Parents who are worried about their children who are graduating from university, what sort of a future do they have? I mean, there's so many stories. And I think I do have an insatiable sense of curiosity. So I'm always asking more questions because, especially when I came into this ministry, I had so much to learn and I still have so much to learn. So I'm always asking questions and then kind of filing it away in the background to see when can I pull this out and when can I use this to inform me? When do I need to dig deeper? So I think that was the best part of campaigning. And, you know, I got to say, nobody asked me to run at all. So I'm a bit of an anomaly in that sense. And because people ask me, were you asked multiple times? I was told there was an opening in Calgary Northeast for a variety of different reasons. I got a call from a family member and said, hey, what are you going to do with the rest of your life? And he said, you know, you should consider this because you've done so much community work. And I said, you know what? I am going to consider it. So I put my name in for the nomination, never expecting to win. Won the nomination, never thought I'd win the election, and one thing led to another, and here I am. So that was my experience during the campaign.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to hear you didn't have to be asked. That's a great thing. I would love to hear more and more stories of that. So then moving on kind of with the same question, and I think we'll go to MLA Irwin next. So just what did you kind of maybe learn about yourself through the experience, and if anything surprised you? Oh, I think you're still muted there.
Oh, I totally hit it. There you go. I've been on a million Zooms, so I should know better to actually check. But yeah, this is it's an interesting question because I'm sure there's a million things that I've learned about myself. I think, you know, kind of prior to my prior point around authenticity, like, you know, there's no value in being anyone but who you are, right? Like there's no point in being someone you're not. Politics can be really tough. You can find, you know, especially when you're running, you can find that there are perhaps pieces in your parties, you know, and when you're running in party politics, there may be pieces in your party's platform that you struggle with, or there may be a number of you know, voters who you run into who aren't happy about a certain issue. But you need to be true to yourself, right? And I think politicians get in trouble when they, you know, say one thing to one person and say something else to another. And so just that value in being yourself. And and I think I learned a lot about being very unequivocal in what my values are, because there were people, I mean, a lot of folks know I'm in Highlands, Norwood. I'm in an area where I have the NDP has traditionally had a lot of support, absolutely. But, you know, I had people who told me homosexuality was a sin at the doors, and I had people who you know, swore at me and said just awful things. I know we're talking about the joys of running. Don't worry, there's lots of really positive things. I'm not trying to scare people off, but yeah, the point being, like, sure, I had these awful experiences, but I also, you know, just like Minister Sani just said, you know, you also connect with so many people and you hear so many powerful stories, and that's what motivates you, right? You know, when I meet that person who's you know, close to experiencing homelessness or is on a or whatever it might be, and hardly making ends meet, you know, that's that's a story that sticks with me. And I mean, there's so many stories I can share of the constituents that I represent. And so, yeah, I think just I learned the value of being myself and of being authentic and of listening too. I think that's an important one as well. I'm going to stop talking because I want to hear all the questions that these folks have, and we're just being politicians.
Thank you so much for your answer. I think that authenticity piece that you're speaking to, I can imagine that's very closely tied to what also brings joy to your work as well, when you are able to be yourself and yeah, bring forward what you care about. So maybe just to wrap up this question, we just have Pearl left if you'd like to jump in terms of what you've learned about yourself and what surprised you.
Well, I think I want to start out with, first of all, the way that I got involved in politics. I kept receiving calls from 7 elders from about November to January 28th of 1988, asking me to run. And I thought that I said, run from whom or run to whom? And, you know, they said, no, it's running for the position where our old MLA was. And I said, well, he's not leaving. And they said, yes, he is. And so they harassed me right till January 28th. And my husband said, I don't think they're going to leave you alone. So we should talk about this and figure out what it means. We didn't realize what it meant at that time, and the extent of the time that you'd be away from home, the fact that you wouldn't see your child grow up in many instances, the fact that you would not see your husband as often as you'd like, that you were consumed. You were consumed by the job once you took it, once you decided to take it. And so that was what drove me. And so what did I learn about myself in that whole process? I learned I'm cool under pressure, that I'm a good delegator, that I learned I'm a great questioner. I also learned that I'm a great listener. And I found out that I really am a good negotiator. You know, helped negotiate a lot of deals for many of the people I represented. So, and the other thing that I want to talk about is, I think, important for anybody who wants to run. I could go without sleep for a long, long, long time. And that's what you need.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. Yeah, so I think what we'll do next is we'll jump into the audience questions. I'm just looking at a second screen here with the questions coming in. This first question, I personally really want to know the answer of. So yeah, we'll just jump right in. So what are some moments where you felt the impact of your work? Any standout stories where you felt like your effort and, you know, your diligence and motivation really, really paid off? And maybe I'll go to MLA Irwin first.
That doesn't seem fair. Okay, can you just say it once more?
Absolutely. So are there any moments that you can kind of think back to where you really saw the impact of your work, or any kind of stories that stand out to you where you felt like your efforts really paid off?
Oh my goodness. Okay. I was just trying to buy some time there. Let's be honest. No, truly, like, oh gosh, there's probably there's so many things. So I just have to think of one. Yeah, and don't worry, I'm not I won't attack any political parties, but it's just a really good a good example. Just when you know, when the UCP raised the pride flag and then took it down, you know, it was pretty tough to see for sure. And I had a young trans person reach out to me and say, like, you know, the minister that was minister here might say that it's you know, it's just a symbolic thing, and that you know, we do this with all the flags, but that young trans person said that for me it's actually a symbol of safety and a symbol that I'm welcome here. And I actually chatted with that person, and you know, they just told me about how much value you know, how much they value the work that me and my colleagues have done to stand up for LGBTQ2S+ rights, right? So, you know, to just bring it back to, you know, the number of young queer and trans people who've just said, like, you know, thank you for being visible, and thank you for being unequivocal in your support, right? Because we know, and especially with COVID, we know that a lot of young queer and trans people struggled, and many are still struggling, right? They don't have the same nets of safety that they've had, right? I just actually talked to a teacher who said that their GSAs aren't running right now, right? So I take that really seriously, right? That, you know, even if a young person might not have that physical support in their life, that if they can, you know, see someone like me who's trying to fight for them and trying to make it clear that it's okay to be gay, it's okay to be queer, then I think then I've done my job a little bit. So thank you.
Wonderful. What a great story. Thank you. Maybe next we'll go to Pearl for any standout stories of times that you really felt like you got to witness your efforts pay off.
My haha moments. I would say the first thing was passing meaningful legislation. And when I was first elected, I was asked to sponsor the Métis Settlements Act, which gave the Métis the ability to govern themselves, when previously that governance component was never available to them, nor was there any land available for them. So this, after 100 or so years, we were finally seeing some of the fights that they had to be recognized was recognized in Alberta. And so to me, that was really meaningful for the impact it had on so many people of Métis descent. And I think the second part of my moment is probably the redesign of children's services. If you recall, Children in Care in those years when I became the associate minister, or minister without portfolio, was 54% of children in care. And so Ralph, in his wisdom, said, you know, we need representation of someone who understands how to deal with the Indigenous component, and especially families and children who need to be taken care of by the families. We need to move that system of where the government is the caretaker to the families who are really the true caretakers. So to me, that said that we had to do something to be able to give the families the ability to do that. And so it was really moments when people would say, oh my goodness, finally we're seeing that we are acknowledged as caretakers. We are acknowledged by the fact that we can take care of our own children. And when we talk about the Indigenous children in care, I mean, we've gone through so much, the 60 scoop, you know, the residential school. So for them, it was a moment to be able to celebrate, to say, we can take care of our own. We have to be given the structures in order for us to be taken care of, to take care of our own. And I think that consultation with the communities, with the people, and making sure that there was an ability for places for people to go and to be able to access the support they required in order for them to become the real parents and the true parents. I think those are the two biggest ones that I have seen the impact of being elected as an individual who wanted to make sure that you can make a difference for the people that you represent, whom you represent.
Wow, thank you so much. Yeah, you touched on some incredible topics, and I'm so glad we're having those conversations, and kind of, you know, we're continuing to have these conversations to make sure that people are seen, and that's incredible. So Minister Sawhney, we'll wrap up this question with you. So just in terms of yeah, any standout moments where you really saw your efforts pay off?
Sure. Thank you, Tony. Well, first, I just want to say I'm just deeply humbled and impressed by what Pearl just spoke about in terms of everything that she accomplished. It was obviously groundbreaking work, and you truly are a role model that I aspire to. I don't know you well, I've heard of you, but your story is very compelling. And Janice, you know, woman to woman, forget party ideology, all of that business, but the work that you do is so incredibly important as well. And I say that with true sincerity, and I appreciate it. So I just wanted you to know. For me, I'm very early on in my game here. I've done a lot of intervened personally in a lot of casework to try to move things along for our vulnerable clients. I've dealt with some issues in my constituency from residents who have come in and shared instances of racism that they have experienced and have been able to move some situations forward for them. And that was really important work, especially now during this time. But I think the standout moment for me was right after the pandemic was announced, and we had a COVID-19 fund that was announced, and my job was to find out where all the vulnerable people are in the province and how I was going to reach them to make sure I could get them some funds right away, whether it was seniors, whether it was people in the disability community, LGBTQ community, homeless shelters, women's shelter. How was I going to get this money into their hands right away? And I didn't sleep. I think the stress just about killed me, but the resilience and the persistence in my team, we actually made everything happen very quickly, and it was nonpartisan. We reached out across all party lines just to make sure that everybody who needed help could get the help. And I'm proud of that work. I know it wasn't perfect work, but it was, I'm cool under pressure too, is what I realized. It was very vital work, and it's still work that continues.
Wonderful. Thank you for that answer. And, you know, I will absolutely echo Minister Sani there of just feeling so humbled, impressed with all of your contributions and, you know, your leadership and what that's representing for us right now. So thank you so much for sharing that, but also for your work. So our next question is kind of around how you mentally cope and kind of manage some of the bullying, online trolling in this virtual world that we have too. And, you know, under the context of, it's pretty well established that kind of the criticisms that come towards women are quite different, especially in politics. So maybe for this one, I'll jump to Pearl to start us off.
I'm not in politics anymore, but I will talk about at a point where as a Minister of Indigenous Affairs, what happened was we had to deal with the consultation process, and that consultation process was very divisive. And it was because we were trying to make sure that the Indigenous people would have an ability to be involved in economic initiatives that were available, to be able to ensure that we recognized what was in the Constitution for their rights and of course responsibilities. And when we were bringing that consultation forward to work with the Indigenous community and the First Nations people, basically, I received so many horrible letters, so many horrible phone calls. And I asked a lawyer to help me be able to write the letters to the individuals. And he said, I wouldn't write back. And he said, these are just horrible. They're horrendous. These are probably the worst that I've ever seen. And I decided at that point that I had to address the issue. You don't let something sit. And so I had to make sure that I responded and tried to make sure they understood. And so I think what you do is you do everything you can to make sure that you address the issue, number one. Number two, you try to give the correct information. Number three is that you have to maintain your solid standing. And number four, you never give in to anything like that, is my view. And so you try to ensure that people understand that, yeah, you do have a backbone, that yes, it's wrong. And yes, that I am human too. And that I will do whatever I have to in order for me to be able to let you know that what you say, what you do is wrong. And that we have to be able to understand that part and make sure that we continue to push the envelope and say, it's not, if it's, no matter who it is, we won't stand up for that.
Wonderful, thank you. What an insightful answer. I appreciate your 4 steps there. An excellent framework on how to manage all this. So next we'll jump to Minister Sani with the same question.
Thank you. Well, I will admit that during my campaign, when I was first the subject of criticism, online criticism, my first reaction was, that's so unfair. I mean, if they knew me, they would know that I'm not like that at all. And I felt so misunderstood. And so I spent a lot of time and effort just trying to explain myself and realize that in many cases, I was never going to be successful because that's just the way it was going to be. And over time, what I realized is that a lot of the people who are making these online comments, I mean, it's very easy to be a keyboard warrior behind the scenes, but if you confront them, or if you say, here's my phone number, give me a call, I would rarely get a call. And in addition to that, what I also realized is that a lot of people are just hurting. They're upset. The anger comes from a place of hurt. And what I realized that I just needed to be more compassionate and understand that this was not a reflection of who I am as a person. People were lashing out. I am at times an easy target to lash out. And so quite often nowadays, because I deal with such a vulnerable clientele, all of the vulnerable folks in our province, in the various programs, I mean, I hear from them all the time, and some of the comments are not great. And I just understand that I have to take it at times, because the station that I hold as Minister of Community and Social Services is separate from the person that I am as Rajan Sani, and I always have to understand that it's not personal at times. It really is a comment towards the station, and that helps tremendously. Now, I will still admit that, and my staff, they tell me to stop it all the time, but I do reach out to people who contact me on Facebook. I do reach out to them directly. My phone number is out there. I've never tried to hide my personal cell phone number, because I think if people have the opportunity to talk to me, then I actually do see less online bullying. I think accessibility is key, but it's never easy. It really bothers me when my family is targeted, when I hear things like, we know where your kids go to school, we know where your parents live. And I'm like, my poor parents did nothing but work their fingers to the bone their whole life, and they don't deserve this. But they're much more resilient about stuff like that than I am. So yeah, it's not easy, but it's I guess it's the life that we chose.
Thank you for your answer, and you know, your honesty in sharing that experience. And the next, Janice, we'll go to you.
Thank you. And you called me Janice this time, which is great, because speaking of Twitter, somebody said on Twitter, Aaron, who must be joining the session, said, we're hearing insights from Janice Irwin, who's referred to as MLA Irwin, and I keep thinking she's being called Emily Irwin. So call me Janice. And I said to her in response that I've been called much worse, which is a good segue into answering this question, because, and Twitter's truly the worst example. As Rajan said, like it's like when I first got you know, really negative comments, and most of the comments I get that are awful, it's like people calling me ugly, people calling me a man. I get that so often, like, who's this dude? And I'm like, what do all these like men have against other men? Like, what's wrong even if I were a man? Like, I don't understand. Anyways, but my point is, I can laugh at it now, because as Rajan said, I mean, I view it as issues that those folks have themselves. Like, I try to respond with empathy, because like in many cases, these are actual people too. They're not just trolls. Like, you know, I'll click on their profile and it's like, you know, a guy in Edmonton who has kids, and he's calling me awful things on the internet, right? But I try to respond with empathy, because what kind of place are you in that you spend your day calling politicians on the internet ugly, right? Like, it really bothers me a lot less than it used to. I think at first I was kind of like, holy crow. But the really positive thing, because again, we're talking about the joys of running. And I know I do get this question a lot when I talk with women who are thinking about running for office, like, how do I deal with this? And how do I, how do you stay strong when you feels like you're constantly getting attacked? And the reality is it's not always like that. And there, for me, the really cool thing is, although I get some really, really awful comments, I also get a lot of really positive comments and a lot of love too, which helps. And, I always tell women who are interested in running for politics to just make sure you have support too, right? Like, make sure you have people that you can go to if you are feeling, if you're just feeling in a place where you need to talk. Like, that's crucial, is having that network, because it can certainly feel overwhelming, and it can feel like the world's an awful place sometimes. But there truly are, and I'm not trying to be cheesy, but there truly are so many joys of running and of being in elected office. So I never want that to be a deterrent for women wanting to run for office. Yeah, we have to acknowledge the realities, but we also need to know that we can overcome them.
Absolutely. Thank you. And I appreciate you bringing it, back to our central topic of joy, as, that's a very integral part of our conversation. But I think it's also important to recognize that joy doesn't come without some of the drawbacks too. So I appreciate all of your honesty about that. And also the correction, I'm happy to say Janice. So we'll move forward that way. And the next question also is for you, Janice. This is from someone from our audience. So they're asking, how do you cope with losing your first race and finding the energy and courage to run again?
Yeah, hey, and that's a really good question, because, there's, if even a quarter of the people on this call decide to run for, say, city council, they're not all going to be successful, right? And that's a reality. I can truly say, the campaign we ran, we had, it was, like I said, it was 2 years of my life. We knocked on every single door in this large federal riding. We got hundreds of volunteers. We raised tens of thousands of dollars. And in the end, I lost to a conservative guy who got 39% of the vote. I got 36%. And the Liberal, who nobody knew and had done nothing the whole campaign, got 20%. So cheers to first past the post, but that's a whole other topic. But it was obviously really heartbreaking. And I can tell you, the hardest part was feeling like I'd let so many people down, because we really felt like, for the first time first time in 30 years anyways, we're going to elect a new Democrat federally on the north side of Edmonton. It's going to happen, right? And just feeling like I'd built up all this momentum and I had so much support, only to lose by what felt like such a small margin, right? So I think that was the toughest part, was feeling like, oh gosh, I'd let people down, and that I'd lost to somebody who, lives on the opposite side of the city and is notoriously not always the kindest person. And so that was tough as well. But I think what was really promising coming out of the loss, was how many people said, like, I hope you stay involved, and I hope you keep fighting, that sort of thing, right? And so I would just tell everybody who's on the Zoom here that, like, even if you're not successful, it's not a reflection of the work effort you put in or of how great of a person you are. There are a lot of really talented, incredible people who don't win, and who don't win their first time or their second time or their 10th time. There was a woman who, Julia Kaniski here in Edmonton, who ran, fun fact, city council. She ran city council. Oh gosh, don't quote me. It's been a while since I put this random piece of trivia, but I think she ran like 14 times, something like that. I'm going to look it up. Elected, right? So hopefully you won't have to run that many times, but the point being, like, don't give up. And I learned so much through my first campaign, and so I don't regret it at all. I don't regret the 2 years of, like, grueling door knocking at -30 and all that, because I learned so much. And the other cool thing is, I met so many people and I had so many connections, so that when I ran provincially in the same, part of the same area that I ran federally, I already had this huge network. And that's another piece, and not that I'm just giving unsolicited advice here now, so cut me off at any time, but for anybody who's interested in running for city council, and they're maybe thinking, okay, maybe 2021 isn't quite the right time, get involved in another campaign and volunteer and try to have a key role on that campaign. And if you can, try to do it in an area that you're thinking about running in the future, so that you too can build up those connections and learn about the neighborhoods that you're hoping to represent, and be a part of a campaign, right? So I'm blabbering, sorry folks.
No, not not at all. We appreciate the advice, and I'm sure I'm not the only one that appreciates hearing that. I think I really appreciate you answering that question so honestly too, because I think one of the major maybe roadblocks, at least for me, when I think about running or anything like that, is, oh, what if I lose? What if I'm not successful? So yeah, thank you so much for your honesty around that. So our next question, I'm just going to actually read it. So look off screen here. It's a little bit longer. So the question is, it feels the resume required in order to be successful in politics needs to be more expensive and more extensive and impressive for women. How does one who is passionate and motivated to run bring credibility to the table without the right resume? And maybe we'll go to Minister Sani for that one.
Thank you. And thanks for reminding me that this is about joy, because I feel like I went to the dark side there for a moment. And so I do want to bring it back. And, my answer to that question is, like, what is the right resume? Right? I think we tend to pigeonhole ourselves into thinking that we need to have this scale and that scale and this scale. And if we don't know all of these people, and we don't have a degree in communications or political science, where all of these barriers that we put upon ourselves, we can convince ourselves that somehow it's just not enough. I think when we're looking at what it takes to be a successful politician or a representative, I mean, first of all, passion is key. Right? And intention, like, what is your intention? Why are you going into this line of work? Are you doing it for something other than public service? And if you are, what is that reason? So if you have those, I guess, foundational qualities, and you really reflect on that, I think everything else can be built up. I mean, more seasoned people tend to have more experience in the real world at times, which is obviously very helpful. But I think one of the best things that anybody can do, and I think it's been said here, I think Janice said it, is just get out there and talk to people. Know what the issues are in your communities, number one, and knock on as many doors as you can. Network your butt off. Get your campaign team together. I tell you, I learned so much during my campaign team. And what I also learned is that even though I didn't know much about how to campaign, I had a lot of transferable skills that helped me put that together. And wherever you see gaps, find people to fill those gaps. So build your own resume. Just make sure you have the passion and the work ethic, though, before you do so.
Fantastic, thank you. So passion and work ethic. I think that applies to a lot of things. So thank you so much. Pearl, would you like to add anything to that question?
Well, that's a big question. Like Minister Rajan said, passion. You have to be passionate about representing the constituency that you have chosen, or it's chosen you. Because it's people within that constituency. They have issues, they have concerns. So you have to be able to take those concerns and those issues and move them along for them. That's number one. I think the other thing, and she said it well, is again, work ethic. It's true, you have to have a work ethic because it is 24/7. It's not only from 9 to 5. It doesn't happen that way. Politics doesn't happen that way. And so you have to be able to make sure that you have to be willing to work. It's tough. Campaigning is tough. It challenges you physically, mentally, and any other way, because you have to have a value system within yourself, because sometimes that gets torn. That value system gets torn away from you at certain times, and you wonder, oh, what am I going to do here? And I think you have to really believe in that, and making sure that you when you run like you're 100 people behind. If you're going to run, you have to run like you're 100 people behind, even though your team tells you, oh, you've got 200 people here. Well, no, I'm still 100 people behind, because that passion has to drive you to be able to make sure that you keep going and you don't quit when you think that you have reached one level. So you just have to keep on moving, keep on going, making sure that you keep it simple. Make your message simple, because people have to know what you stand for. And making sure that when you do it, I say, communicate, communicate, communicate. That's the biggest thing that you can do in your constituency. Go see people, do individual visits, go to groups, go everywhere. Go see the individuals that are going to make the difference in you and are going to come and help you, like Janice said. And I think you have to be able to light the fire with people, with some idea and some thought, in order for them to come and work and carry that torch for you. It's exciting. It's exciting. We go to the dark side, you're right, Rishan. But it's so exciting. The people drive you, and the issues get you going, and the communication gets you to the point of where you say, oh my goodness, we were able to do it. And yes, we can do it. We can. And just stick to your guns, be honest, be fair, and represent everybody. It's not only one representation. You represent everybody in that constituency. So that's my message.
Wow, thank you so much. Your passion comes across. It's coming across Zoom. So thank you for that. Janice, do you want to touch on that before we move on to the next question?
Yeah, just really quickly, because I was following the chat box there because I had to confirm my trivia about Julia Kuniski, but 14 times, by the way, if you missed that. But just Anna had pointed out that AOC was a waitress before running for the first time and winning against Power Player. And I think that's just the one thing I wanted to stress. Like, you will get people who say like, oh, you're too young, or you don't have enough experience, or you don't have the background to be like, that is all nonsense. The days of you having to be a lawyer or having a poli-sci background or whatever, like, no, heck no. And what was the most cool part about the NDP government in 2015, of course, I was not a part of that, but on election night, when I realized that, like, this was going to be a caucus of students, of social workers, of yoga instructor, teachers, like all these forklift operators, like all these everyday Albertans, a lot of them who, as we know, didn't expect to win. That was exactly what we needed, right? We need, like, our politicians need to represent our province, and you don't have to go back too far to see legislatures that were mostly male and pale and stale, like the common cliche, but very, very white and very male and very middle and upper class, right? And so that shifted, right? Of just having lawyers and business, I'll say that businessmen are gone. And so, I want more weight, serve, Anna, like AOC. Yeah, I want servers. I want folks who've struggled. I want folks who know what it's like to not be able to make ends meet. I want folks who come from racialized backgrounds. I want Indigenous people. I want our legislature to look like Alberta.
Thank you, Janice. Absolutely. And yeah, you touched on some great points there. It's very exciting just to hear everyone's passion there too, kind of talking about that, and working towards having more representatives, or having representation that's much more accurate to our communities. So the next question is, how do you keep your energy up while running for office and holding elected office. Uh, so I'm just trying to see here. Maybe we'll go to Minister Sani first for that one.
Okay, well that's a really good question, because during the campaign, I had all my little kids campaigning with me and door knocking, and it was just super fun. It was exciting talking to people. I didn't really know what I was doing, but it didn't matter because we were getting a good response overall. And so you just kind of feed off of the energy of your team and everybody around you, and what you're hearing at the doors, good or bad. Everything was an interesting conversation at the end of the day. In government, it's been a different story, actually, and I'm struggling with balance. Keeping in mind, this is a discussion about joy, but it's also a good reminder for me to, just really focus on sleep, water, exercise, diet. Everything went to hell, actually, when the pandemic was announced. But I think things are feeling a little bit more stable. So I think, self-care is so important, and looking after your mental health. And I think Pearl and Janice both mentioned it, like surrounding yourself with your supportive family and friends who are going to take the time to listen to all of the craziness that's in your life. That does wonders for the soul and for energy levels, and will also remind you that you need to disengage, you need to disconnect, put your phone down, step away from the computer. My husband reminds me about once a week that I need to make a dental appointment. I need to take a bit of a break. So I think when you have loved ones in your life telling you that, it's really time to take notice. So I'm not a great person to ask about energy and balance right now, but I strive to get there before we're back in session.
Oh, there we go. Perfect. Thank you. And again, the honesty there. And I think that's very relatable. A lot of us, working to figure out how to take care of ourselves and manage that. So Janice, maybe we'll go to you next in terms of, can maintain the energy and stay motivated.
Yeah, hey, why don't we just be totally honest here? Like Garage, and I don't know if I do the best job at self-care, but I know I need to be better. Did I have chips for supper last night? Maybe. But no one other than all of you need to know that. But yeah, no, I certainly know, I certainly am aware of the fact that it's really important, and just like she said, it becomes even, I find it's even tougher when we get into the legislature, because the hours are very unpredictable. Truly, like, Pearl knows this too. Some nights you are home at 10 p.m. and some nights you're home at 4 p.m., right? Like, or 4 a.m. Like it's just, it's very unpredictable. And I'm not even a minister, right? So I can't imagine what those responsibilities mean on top of that. But, for me, the time right now, I tend to fill my days too full, and I try to meet with as many folks in my constituency and as many stakeholders related to my critic portfolios that I can each day, because I want to maximize this time. But that's where, like the minister said, you need to have folks in your life who will, like, say to you, okay, should you maybe take a break? And maybe you should. I actually went to the dentist yesterday, so I actually gotta tell my mom that. I should be very proud of myself. Yeah, so you need people to remind you of those things, and I think it can be hard. It's funny too, because I know being in politics can have a strain on relationships for sure, and so trying to maintain those relationships that are close to you, and I know it's tricky for people who have families. I don't have kids. I'm single, but I think that comes with its challenges too, because it's very easy for me to do whatever the heck I want all day long, and to push myself too hard, right? So making sure for me that I have, my staff and friends who are there to support me, right? And Erin just said, maybe go running off a dock and jump into a lake, Janice, because I did do that. And I did do that in the summer, in fact, with my nephew, right? So having that family time too, where you can just jump into a lake and relax. It's really important. And I always tell people too, who are running for office or thinking about it, like, that fear that they don't have a giant team, that fear that they don't have a huge, they might not think they have a huge support network going into a campaign. And it's not about, honestly, it's not about quantity, it's about quality. And I tell people, if you want to run a successful campaign, this sounds so cheesy, but you need a dream and a good friend. Like truly, when I first started my federal campaign, I didn't have a giant team. I had like one friend who was willing to knock on doors with me. And that's how it started, and it really snowballed from there, and the team just got bigger and bigger. And so don't let that stop you either, I guess is what I'm saying, is if you feel like you just don't have enough support, or you won't be able to do it. I mean, if you've got one or two people who you can count on, it's perfect.
Amazing. So a quality support network is super important there. And then Pearl, will go to you for that question in terms of how do you keep your energy up throughout all your work?
Now it's really good because I've got a fantastic boss, so I'm really doing well. But in terms of the on the election side, I didn't maintain balance for a long time. I lived at the legislature. I lived on the road. I had the biggest constituency ever, with many communities that had to be satisfied, many people's issues had to be satisfied. I had a little girl who really never knew her mother as she was growing up. But as I got a little bit smarter, I started to realize there are some things that you could do. And this is something for everybody who's newly elected or will be elected. Keep fit. I think that's very, very important. Listen to that inner voice. We sometimes want to just put it on the side and say, I ignore that inner voice. And I always talk about the fact that you have to find like-minded people, whether it's in the constituency or in the legislature, so that you can get the best possible out of the people who are there with you. And I always talk about the fact of, if you are a minister or even an MLA, get the best executive assistant you can find, because they're worth their weight in gold. And the staff that come with it, treat them well, because they'll be there for you. And it's because you're going to be delegating, and you should be delegating a lot. And I didn't know how to do that. I took everything upon myself. So delegate, 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 summarize the issues. And in my case, I started to look and say, what are my Indigenous values? And then I revert to them. I say, family, the community. We have to keep learning, keep making sure you see things through, and making sure that you find that spiritual self. I think people sometimes forget, but we should not forget about that spiritual self. And to me, it just says that you are a human being, and you have to be that human being throughout it all. I thought I was Superwoman, but Superwoman also loses and is alone in most cases. And that's not a good thing. So just remember, keep your people close.
Thank you, Pearl. I really appreciate that. Yeah, I just, the wisdom, I really, really do appreciate that. So that's kind of the end of our segment on questions from our audience. But I do want to give each of you an opportunity to kind of share some advice or some, some lasting, any final points you'd like to make, especially in the context of a municipal election happening next year. And hopefully many of the folks watching do have an interest in, putting their name forward. So, oh, I'm so sorry to have to pick someone to go first, but maybe we'll start with Janice to go first.
How did I know you'd pick me? Wow. No, this is great. And honestly, I think I gave a lot of unsolicited advice throughout the evening. So I won't add too much more, but yeah, I want folks to know that, if you're interested, take that, listen to that little voice inside of you that's nudging you, and don't listen to all the negative thoughts that you're going to impose upon yourself as well. We need strong women in elected office. And so I'm really excited by the fact that there's, 40 or so people on this call right now who are interested. And now's the time, right? Many of you will have those conversations with your family and friends, and you'll doubt yourself, and you'll say, okay, maybe now's not the time. I need, I need my kids to get older, or I need more experience, or I need to learn more. There will always be things that you could be doing. There will always be that more. So it's never going to be the perfect time. So why not now? And 2021 feels like it's a little ways away, but it's really not that far away. And so I think you're all doing the right thing already by being here and by asking questions. The sooner you can start, and that doesn't mean launching your campaign, but the sooner that you can start building those networks, start a list. One of the easiest pieces of advice I give to folks is just start a list of every time you meet with somebody who could be a potential supporter, write their name down, jot down their contact information, right? Maybe they'll knock on doors for you. Maybe they'll give you a bit of money. Maybe they'll make a pledge to donate to you. Maybe they want to be really involved in your campaign. Maybe they just want to help you with social media. Whatever it is, write that down. Start making those lists now. And and I'll just leave it with if any folks here on the Zoom want to reach out to me for any advice. Hey, I was going to say my door's open, but it's COVID, so I'm sure you won't be seeing me in person, but I'm certainly available virtually. So I'm sure you can all find me on social media. Send me a message, and yeah, I'd love to at least listen to your story, and if I can help nudge you along the path to running, I'm happy to do so. So thanks to all the folks with Ask Her for having me on, and to everybody who participated, and to my fellow panelists as well. Thanks a lot.
Thanks so much, Janet, and I'm sure everyone's appreciating your generous offer there. So thank you. So next we'll go to Minister Stauney.
Well, I couldn't have said it better myself. I mean, I think Janet's covered it all. And I do know that whenever any one of us venture on something that might seem uncomfortable or something new, there's always 1,000 reasons to say no. And that's what I would say is a challenge. Like, don't talk yourself out of doing something which could be a wonderful experience for you. And I do agree that the time is now. One of the things that I always tell anybody who's contemplating getting into politics or running is to find a mentor or a couple of mentors. It doesn't even have to be one. And look for diversity, right? Don't always go to people who think just like you or look just like you or from the same industry or have the same background. Find that diversity. Find the devil's advocate. Find somebody who's going to tell you the blunt, hard truth about who you are and how you're going to market yourself or put yourself out there. And I shouldn't have used the word market, because I do believe authenticity is very important. You have to be yourself, and you have to get your message out there, and you have to be able to listen to the messages of the people that you're hoping to serve. So mentorship is important, and as is networking, and it's all about getting out there and meeting people and listening. So, and I'm also available as well if anybody ever wants to pick my brains. I mean, I'm a relatively new politician, jumped into a campaign, was really, really lucky, fortunate, and privileged to have won a nomination and an election. Just very, very lucky. So I might not know a lot about a lot of things, but I can certainly help out where I can.
Sorry there, had myself muted. I just wanted to say thank you so much again for the generous offer, but also on your advice on that front. And then we'll go to Pearl to wrap us up for this period.
Thank you very much. I guess I was just reading some of the chats, and I was just going through them, and there was a comment there that's from an individual, I think it was Sarah, who said she doesn't look good on paper. Or, I really strongly believe that you have to believe in yourself, because people will believe in you once you believe in yourself. and that just rubs off on others. So I would suggest that you have to make sure you know why you're running and what you want to do, and that you believe in that, and that you believe in yourself in order for you to get the people to believe in you. And I have been so blessed for 26 years to have represented the people of Lesser Slave Lake. They have been good to me, and I have tried everything to be good to them, to bring their issues to the table, to have issues resolved, to make sure that we address the anomalies that have occurred in the past, to try to address some of the areas of concern for those who have been plagued for years of what they felt government wasn't listening. And I think we have to make sure that as we move forward, and anybody who wants to run, you have to believe in the fact that you can help people resolve the issues. So one of the areas that I was really blessed also was the fact that I had a mentor. And that mentor, actually I had a few mentors, and they were so good to be able to ensure that they knew what I would be getting into once I got into it. And so it was so good because I didn't realize what it was really actually like until you get in there. But you know, it pays off. It is wonderful because you see so much a resolution to areas that sometimes never got resolution. And then you hope that the next person will continue that. I just want to thank Ask Her Calgary for this wonderful opportunity. I don't normally get involved in areas like this. I've got a pretty full life, but I'm in a situation where I have a boss who's she's a female, and so she's just so wonderful in order for us to be involved in so many different things so that we can influence other areas. So thank you very, very much for this. And to all the participants, I was reading the names and the names and of course their thoughts. Thank you very, very much for listening to us as we expound on our ideas and suggestions, and hopefully some great mentorship that'll happen from what I see. Thank you again.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. And to Janice, Minister Sani, and Pearl, we just really appreciate the honesty and the passion that you really brought to this conversation. It was very enlightening, I'm sure, for all of us. And I can absolutely speak as a representative of the board that we're very grateful that you're here, and we have a lot of gratitude for the time you've given us this evening. So moving forward, I do want to introduce one of our other board, Helen Cashman. So she is our events lead, and is kind of a very strong pillar in our on our board of making a lot of things happen. Pass it over to.
Thank you so much, and I'll keep it short because I know we're over time. But I just want to say to all three of our panelists, Janice, Pearl, Minister Sani, wow, thank you so much for coming and sharing your insights with us. I found it incredibly interesting, informative, and inspiring to hear all of your perspectives and what you had in common. I'd also like to say a huge thank you to Tony for doing an awesome job in moderating this discussion and ensuring it was a rich discussion. I'd also like to say a thank you to two of our volunteers. So Ask Her YYC, we're entirely volunteer run. And so tonight would not have been possible without Brooke Campbell and Karen Van Dyne, who did all of the work to make today come together and to bring you this awesome event. I hope that tonight has inspired some of you to make that leap into politics. And I hope that everyone here tonight will just give some thought to how they can help women make political progress, be that by running yourself, supporting a female candidate that you believe in, or getting involved to reduce some of the systemic barriers that prevent women from holding elected office. So if you're interested in looking at breaking down those barriers and volunteering with us, please send us a note and reach out. There's a lot of work to do before the 2021 election. We have a lot of ideas, and we'd love to add some more amazing women to our team over the next year. And for those of you who are interested in holding elected office one day, we do have a program right now called Mentor Her, where we're accepting applications. We heard a lot about about mentorship, and some of our panelists are actually going to be participating in that program as mentors. But it's a group mentorship program where you're placed in small groups and you'll meet with 4 or 5 mentors over the course of the fall. So it's a chance to ask in a more intimate setting everything you have about how do you decide to run, how do you fundraise, what goes into a campaign, what does your brand look like anything on your mind. So applications for that close on September 20th, and all of the information you can find on our website. So I'd really encourage you to check that out if you're considering running in the future. And then just also wanted to let you know that the final event in our Count Women In series will be taking place on October 22nd. It's called Women Belong in the House and the Council Chambers. And we're going to be looking at how gender roles impact female candidates, and how that can be both a challenge but also an opportunity. So hope to see you out there. I think we've posted the Eventbrite link to that in the chat. So if you want to register right now, you can. But again, huge thank you to everyone for coming out and supporting us, and to our panelists for making this an absolutely incredible evening. Thanks everyone, and have a good night.